cheese, and it is greasy and kind of curdled. This is a cheese that wasn't aged. It melts nice and smoothly, and also got a little nuttier. If you're going to put your ham sandwich in the panini press, this would be something you might want to consider. So, you've been sampling the slices here. Anything you're liking or not liking?
Yes, I have clear preferences.
Good.
I love this. This is nutty. It has that, what you really like, that depth of flavor. It was a real standout, I thought. This was made in a large factory somewhere. This is really plasticky, it's terrible. I thought this one was also pretty good. It would be my number 2 choice, but it didn't have that real nuttiness that this one had, and that was okay. So this is definitely my winner, and that would be my runner-up, and that was the worst.
Okay, well, let's see what you liked, Chris.
This is what I liked.
And you agree with the tasting panel. Believe it or not, that is from Wisconsin.
Really?
Yes, it is unfortunately, it's mail order. It's not really widely available.
This is good.
But it's Edelweiss. It is made like they make it in Switzerland,
this
aged
is really
a year.
good.
Just a really great eating cheese.
I feel like running out and wrapping myself in the flag. That's great. And was this one the Swiss thing?
This is also Swiss. Now, this is only aged 4 months rather than a year. And this was the only one of the cheeses that we felt like could work both on a cheese board as well as in a sandwich. That one melted much better than the Edelweiss, which was so aged that it really kind of broke up when you tried to melt it.
And I thought this was American cheese or something close.
This is Kraft. This is one that's not aged at all,
Yeah.
and it's just absolutely no personality whatsoever. It doesn't get a whole lot better when you melt it.
And this one?
This was of the supermarket cheeses, this is the Boar's Head. This one had a little bit more personality than the Kraft, got a lot better when you melted it, and if all you're going to do is melt it and you really want to save money, the Boar's Head is a good choice.
So I'm proud to say that the winner of our Swiss cheese tasting did not come from Switzerland. It came from Wisconsin. It's a great cheese. It's the number 1 in our Swiss cheese tasting. So everyone's first thought when confronted with the notion of making sweet potato fries is to cook them just like you would regular fries, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a 2-level method, 320, then up to 360. Take them out in between, and you get this, which is very crunchy, perfectly done French fries. Well, we did just now use exactly the same method with sweet potatoes, and you get, well, these are really soggy, you can tell, and my hands are full of grease. Now, the problem is sweet potatoes have more water, more sugar, and less starch. So I think that's going to mean a totally different approach, and that's why, Dan, you're here.
Well, you're right, Chris. We are going to take a totally different approach. The first thing we're going to address is the actual size of the fries. So what we're going to do is actually a thick cut fry, which is about a 3/4 inch wedge, and some of these are cut in half because they come from larger potatoes. So as you said, these don't have nearly as much starch as a russet potato does. So we're going to need to add starch to the outside, and we're going to do that with cornstarch. So I've got 1/2 cup of cornstarch right here in the bowl and 1/2 cup of cold water. You want to start with cold water so it doesn't clump up and start to gel. And now I'm just going to whisk it until smooth. All right, that looks good. So Chris, I could, and you see a lot of recipes do this, just add the raw potatoes directly to this, go right into the fry oil. The problem is it doesn't really work that well. What happens is these are really thick, takes a long time to cook them through. You end up crisping the exterior and it starts to brown before you even get them cooked all the way through. So we're going to do a blanch step. So what I've got here is a large Dutch oven. I've got 2 quarts of water in there that I'm starting to bring up to a simmer. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of kosher salt, which is obviously going to add some seasoning to the potatoes. But the real key ingredient is a teaspoon of baking soda. So that might sound like a bit of an odd ingredient, but it's actually key to this recipe. What the baking soda will do is actually going to break down the exterior of the fry very rapidly. And that sloughed off starch, all that good stuff, is going to mix into our slurry. So we're going to get this nice orange coating on the outside that tastes like sweet potato but crisps up really well. Okay, so Chris, our blanched water with the salt and the baking soda has come up to a boil. I'm going to add all my sweet potatoes all at once here. That's going to drop the water temperature. We're going to let it come back up to a boil and then cook for about 3 to 5 minutes. So while that's happening, I'm going to put together a little sauce. I have here 6 tablespoons of mayonnaise. Now I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of Asian chili garlic sauce. Now this is actually sambal oelek. Any of the Asian chili garlic sauces like sriracha would work as well. So that's going to balance out that creamy mayonnaise. And then for a little bit more acidity, I have 2 teaspoons of white vinegar. All right, I'm going to switch over to my whisk here and just combine these. This is the world's easiest sauce. Okay, so Chris, we've got a nice orange foam on the top, which may not look like a good thing, but it is. It's a signal that we're getting some stuff coming off the outside of our sweet potatoes. So
if I did this at home and I saw this, I would be very nervous.
Understandably. I promise it's a good thing at this point. Okay, so I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm actually going to take these directly from our blanched water into the slurry. I'm going to drain off some of the liquid and pop them in. With my rubber spatula, start to fold them together. Now it's okay if some of the longer ones break into smaller pieces. You just get more surface area to get nice and crispy. Okay, so Chris, it's time to fry. And as you can see, I'm not using a Dutch oven. I'm using a 12-inch nonstick skillet with just 3 cups of peanut oil. So what I'm going to do is add about 1/3 of the potatoes at a time right into the skillet here. And I want to give them a little room to breathe. It's okay if they end up sticking together. You can use tongs or something to pull them apart, but it's easier if you just kind of separate them from the get-go.
So that cornstarch slurry turned into a really thick paste, as predicted.
As predicted. So the thicker the coating, the crispier they're going to be. All right, that looks great. So these guys are going to fry at a lower temperature. It's going to be about 300 degrees, and that's going to take 7 to 10 minutes. I'm going to flip them halfway through. Okay, so Chris, these are looking really nice now. This has been about 7 minutes. You can see that they're starting to get nice and brown. So I'm just going to transfer them over here to a wire rack I've set in a rim baking sheet. You can see some of them are stuck together a little bit, but that's not a problem. So while they're still hot, and you can see the oil on the outside, I'm going to season them pretty heavily with kosher salt. You want that nice kind of sweet, salty balance with these. So now I'm going to transfer these to a 200-degree oven to stay warm while I finish the other batches. And these will stay crispy for quite a long time. Okay, Chris, while those stay warm, I'm going to start the next batch of fries as soon as the oil comes up to temp.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the difference between russet potatoes and sweet potatoes. Now, normally when you do French fries, you start with a thin fry at 320. After you get lightly brown, you take them out, let them sit, get the oil up to about 360, and then do a second fry. That doesn't work at all for sweet potatoes for 3 reasons. There's more water inside, there's more sugar inside, and there's less starch. So the first thing we did was par cook the sweet potato fries with a little baking soda that roughed up the outside, and then put them into the cornstarch slurry, which is also water-based, to get that extra starch. Now what happens with starch on the outside is it starts to form a gel, and then when you keep cooking it, extra moisture comes out, you get a nice crispy exterior, and with the cornstarch slurry, we've mimicked the starch in the russet potatoes. Now the next problem is sugar. There's a lot of sugar in sweet potatoes. If we use the hotter oil for the second part of the frying process, that would burn on the outside. So we kept the temperature to constant 325. In terms of extra moisture, we're cooking them longer, again at 325, so that moisture comes out, and you almost undercook the inside of the sweet potato, get a nice smooth texture. Now one last thing. You think that if we're using a lower oil temperature, they become greasy. That's actually not true. The water inside has to come out before the frying oil goes in. And that tends to happen during that cooling off period with a regular recipe between the first fry and second fry. There's no cooling off here, so there's actually less oil in our sweet potato fries than in normal russet fry.
Okay, so Chris, all of the frying is done, and I have the beautiful sweet potato fries in front of us. I've also got our sauce from before. So I'm just going to put a little on your plate here. Well, it's a bit spicy, but it is nice and creamy too, so it kind of balances out.
Oh, man. They're really crunchy on the outside, which you could tell by looking at them. But the inside is, as you said, if you keep cooking them, they get that really creamy texture. So the secret to great sweet potato fries at home is we started with big wedge cut fries, and then we par cooked them with a little baking soda and water, and then we did a water-based cornstarch slurry, which attached itself to it. We also cooked them at 1 temperature, not 2, at 325 for a longer period of time. So there you have it, from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen. I think the world's best recipe for sweet potato fries. You can get this recipe, all the recipes from this season, our testings, tastings, and watch select episodes at our website, which is, of course, americastestkitchen.com.